Amara Johnson was just trying to get a good education at the prestigious Westfield Academy. As one of the few black students at the school, she expected challenges, but she never expected to become the target of systematic discrimination. When Tyler Whitmore, the principal's son, began harassing her, Amara did what her mother had taught her. She documented everything and followed proper channels. But Principal Whitmore didn't see a student exercising her rights. He saw a threat to his authority. He called Amara to his office and placed her on probation without evidence, without documentation, without following proper procedures. What Principal Whitmore didn't know was that Amara's mother wasn't just any parent. Diana Johnson was the state education commissioner with oversight authority over every school in the state. Now Amara faces a critical choice. Does she use her mother's position for protection? Or does she stand on principle and fight a system that has silenced students like her for years? In a story of courage, documentation, and strategic advocacy, watch as one student's refusal to accept injustice sparks a movement that brings a decade of discrimination to light. The truth will be heard, justice will prevail, and Westfield Academy will never be the same. If you've ever witnessed injustice in a position of power, what would you have done in Amara's situation? Would you have revealed your mother's identity immediately, or fought the battle on your own terms first? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of courage triumphing over discrimination. 17-year-old Amara Johnson adjusted her backpack as she stood at the entrance of Westfield Academy, the most prestigious high school in the state. This was her first day after transferring from her previous school, where her mother had served as principal before accepting a major appointment with the state education department. Diana Johnson had raised Amara with quiet strength after her father's passing 5 years ago. As a former educator with 3 advanced degrees, Diana had recently been appointed as the state education commissioner, a fact Amara's new school was unaware of, as Diana preferred to keep her professional achievements separate from her daughter's educational experience. Make your own path, Diana had always told her. Your achievements should speak for themselves. Amara took a deep breath and entered Westfield Academy. Unlike her previous school, where diversity was celebrated, Westfield's hallways were filled predominantly with white faces. She'd known this when applying. Westfield was known for its exceptional STEM program, and Amara's dream of becoming a biomedical engineer had made this transfer worth the adjustment. The morning passed quickly, with Amara navigating from AP Chemistry to AP Calculus, then to AP Literature. In each class, she was the only black student, but most teachers were welcoming. By lunchtime, Amara had collected a stack of syllabi and first-day handouts. She found an empty table in the cafeteria and pulled out her lunch. She had just taken her first bite when she noticed a group of students looking her way and whispering. One boy, with an athletic build and an expensive watch, nudged his friend and snickered. A friendly girl from chemistry class named Mackenzie joined her. "Mind if I sit with you?" As they ate, Mackenzie pointed out various social groups. "That's the swim team by the windows. Theater kids are near the vending machines. And those guys," she nodded toward the group that had been watching Amara, "are led by Tyler Whitmore. He's the principal's son." Before Amara could respond, Tyler approached their table, flanked by 2 friends. "You're in my seat," he said, staring down at Amara. "I don't see names assigned to any tables," Amara replied calmly. Tyler's eyes narrowed. "Maybe they do things differently where you're from, but at Westfield there's a certain order to things." "There are lots of other places to sit, Tyler," Mackenzie said. "I wasn't talking to you," Tyler snapped. "I'm talking to the diversity admission." "I earned my place here just like everyone else," Amara stated firmly, "and I'm not moving." Tyler leaned forward. "Do you know who my father is?" "Should I care?" Amara replied. Tyler's face darkened. As he straightened up, his arm accidentally knocked over Amara's water bottle, spilling water across her lunch and notes. "Oops," he said with mock concern as his friends laughed. "You'll regret coming to Westfield," Tyler muttered as he walked away. "People like you don't belong here." What neither Tyler nor anyone else at Westfield realized was that Amara Johnson wasn't just any transfer student, and her mother wasn't just any parent, but Amara had promised Diana she would handle her own challenges without invoking her mother's position unless absolutely necessary. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of challenging coursework and subtle hostility. Amara excelled in her classes, but Tyler Whitmore and his friends had made it their mission to make her feel unwelcome. Whispered comments, mysteriously disappearing belongings, exclusion from study groups. "Don't let them get to you," Mackenzie advised. "They're just intimidated because you're smarter than they are." Amara nodded, already keeping a detailed journal of every incident, complete with dates, times, witnesses, and even recordings. Her mother had taught her the importance of documentation years ago. "Paper trails matter, Amara," Diana had always said. "When it's your word against theirs, evidence speaks volumes." In AP Literature, Ms. Winters announced a major group project. I've assigned the groups myself, she said, reading from her list. Eventually, she announced Johnson, Whitmore, and Zhang. Amara's stomach tightened. Tyler, sitting across the room, made no effort to hide his disgust. After class, Tyler confronted her in the hallway. Just because we're in the same group doesn't mean I want to work with you. Lynn and I will handle the project. You just stay out of our way. That's not how group projects work, Amara replied firmly. I'm not letting your issues affect my grade. Tyler's eyes narrowed. You think you're so smart, don't you? Coming here showing off in every class like you have something to prove. A passing teacher glanced their way, and Tyler immediately transformed his demeanor. When the teacher continued walking, Tyler leaned in close. This is my school. My father runs this place, remember that. With that, he shouldered past her roughly, causing her to stumble back against the lockers. That evening, Amara received an email from Principal Whitmore's office calling her in for a meeting to discuss concerns about her adjustment to Westfield. The next morning, Amara dressed with particular care and headed directly to the administrative wing. Principal Whitmore's office was immaculate and imposing, with wood paneling and framed diplomas covering the walls. He didn't stand when Amara entered, nor did he offer his hand. Miss Johnson, take a seat. Good morning, Principal Whitmore. I received your email about meeting to discuss my adjustment to Westfield. Whitmore steepled his fingers. Yes, I've been receiving concerning reports about your behavior. My behavior. From whom? Several sources, he said dismissively. It seems you're having trouble adapting to Westfield's academic and social standards. There have been complaints about you being confrontational with other students. Amara controlled her reaction. That's interesting, Principal Whitmore, because I've maintained a 4 GPA since transferring here, and I've had positive interactions with most of my classmates. Could you be more specific about these complaints? Well, for one, he said, pulling a file from his desk drawer, you had an altercation with a student yesterday after literature class. Are you referring to my conversation with Tyler? Amara asked. A flash of surprise crossed Whitmore's face. So you admit there was an incident, there was a conversation, Amara clarified, about a group project we've been assigned together. That's not how it was reported to me, Whitmore said. I've been told you were aggressive and threatening. Principal Whitmore, with all due respect, that's simply not true. In fact, she reached for her phone. I have a voice recording I made immediately after our interaction documenting exactly what happened. Whitmore's expression darkened. Recording other students without their knowledge is a violation of our school policy. I didn't record the conversation itself, Amara explained. I recorded my own recollection immediately afterward. Whitmore leaned forward, his demeanor shifting from dismissive to intimidating. Miss Johnson, let me be frank. Westfield Academy maintains certain standards. Your scholarship position here is provisional and can be revoked if we determine you're not a suitable match for our institution. I'm not on scholarship, Principal Whitmore. My mother pays my full tuition. This caught him off guard, but he recovered quickly. Nevertheless, the point stands. Your continued enrollment here depends on your ability to conform to Westfield's expectations. I'm placing you on probationary status effective immediately. Any further incidents will result in your immediate dismissal. The implication was crystal clear. He was threatening to expel her. May I ask what specific school policies I've violated to warrant probation? Amara asked. Insubordination, disruption of the learning environment, aggressive behavior toward other students. Do you have documentation of these violations? Because I have comprehensive records of my time here, including academic achievements, positive feedback from teachers, and documentation of harassment I've experienced. You're dismissed, he finally said. Remember, you're on probation, one step out of line and you're out. Amara stood calmly. Thank you for your time, Principal Whitmore. I'll be discussing this meeting with my mother this evening. She takes a keen interest in educational policy and procedural fairness. As she turned to leave, Whitmore called after her. And who exactly is your mother, Miss Johnson? A lawyer? Amara paused at the door. No, not a lawyer. Just someone who believes every student deserves equal treatment and due process. Amara immediately called her mother and recounted the meeting with Principal Whitmore. Diana was calm but resolute. First, I want you to know how proud I am of how you handled that situation, Diana said. You remained composed and asked all the right questions. He put me on probation, Mom, for nothing. I know, sweetheart, what he did was inappropriate and potentially illegal. Diana paused. You have two options now. You can transfer to another school or we can address this situation directly. I don't want to leave, Amara said firmly. I've worked too hard to get into these advanced classes, and if I leave, Tyler and his father win. Then we need to build your case, Diana said. You mentioned you've been documenting incidents. That's excellent. Now we need more witnesses and more evidence of the pattern. Throughout the day, Amara gathered additional evidence. P. Chemistry, she carefully approached Lin Zhang, her literature project partner. Lin, have you noticed how Tyler treats me differently than other students? Amara asked quietly. Lynn glanced around nervously before nodding. Everyone notices, nobody says anything because of who his father is. Has he said anything specific when I'm not around? Lynn hesitated. He says terrible things about you not belonging here, about your race. I don't agree with him, but I'm afraid to speak up. My parents sacrificed everything for me to attend Westfield. By lunchtime, Amara had sent a carefully worded email to Principal Whitmore requesting written documentation of her alleged policy violations and the evidence supporting her probationary status. She copied Mrs. Patel, the secretary, as a witness. Mackenzie, learning of Amara's situation, revealed that her father was on the school board. My dad's not very involved, he's too busy with his dental practice, but he does care about the school's reputation and fairness. If I told him about this, he'd definitely be concerned. That could be really helpful, Amara said thoughtfully. After school, Amara checked her email and found a terse response from Principal Whitmore. Miss Johnson, your probationary status is based on multiple reported incidents of disruption and confrontational behavior. As principal, I have discretionary authority to place students on probation when their conduct raises concerns. No further documentation is necessary. Gerald Whitmore, Principal. That evening, Amara and Diana reviewed the school's student handbook and disciplinary procedures. This is even worse than I thought, Diana eventually said. According to their own handbook, probationary status requires written documentation of specific incidents, teacher referrals, and a parent conference before implementation, none of which happened in your case. So he violated the school's own policies. Multiple violations, Diana confirmed. And given that you're one of very few black students at the school, and you've documented a pattern of racial harassment that the administration has ignored, we have the beginnings of a discrimination case. The next morning, Diana sent an email from her personal account requesting a meeting with Principal Whitmore. By lunchtime, Amara had received a message that Principal Whitmore would meet with them the following morning. He agreed surprisingly quickly, Amara told Mackenzie. That might be because of my dad, Mackenzie replied. I told him everything last night and he was furious. He called a fellow board member, then sent an email to Whitmore asking about disciplinary procedures for transfer students. There's more, Mackenzie continued. I started asking around discreetly, and you're not the first student of color to be targeted by Tyler and protected by his dad. Last year, there was a Latino student named Miguel who left suddenly. Rumors were that Tyler bullied him relentlessly, and when Miguel complained, Principal Whitmore turned it around on him somehow. The next morning, Amara and Diana arrived at Westfield Academy 15 minutes before their scheduled meeting with Principal Whitmore. Diana was dressed in a navy blue pantsuit, professional but deliberately understated. She carried a leather portfolio containing all of Amara's documentation. We start with reasonable requests based on the school's own policies. We only escalate if necessary, Diana reminded Amara as they entered Whitmore's office. Principal Whitmore remained seated as they entered. Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming. I have a busy schedule today, so let's keep this brief. Diana smiled pleasantly. I appreciate you making time for us. I believe there's been some confusion regarding my daughter's status at Westfield that needs to be addressed. There's no confusion, Whitmore replied dismissively. As I explained to Amara, she's been placed on probationary status due to behavioral concerns. It's a standard disciplinary measure. I've reviewed Westfield's student handbook quite thoroughly, Diana said, opening her portfolio. And according to Section 4.3 regarding disciplinary procedures, probationary status requires specific documented incidents, teacher referrals, and a parent conference before implementation. Could you share the documentation that led to this decision? Whitmore's eyes narrowed. As principal, I have discretionary authority in disciplinary matters. The specific documentation is confidential. Ms. Johnson, Whitmore said condescendingly, I understand you're concerned as a parent, but I'm afraid you don't fully grasp how educational institutions operate. Diana's smile never faltered. Actually, I have a fairly good understanding of educational policy and procedural requirements. I'm particularly interested in the specific incidents that led to this decision. There have been multiple reports of confrontational behavior, Whitmore stated vaguely. I've received complaints from other students, including my son. That's interesting, Diana replied, pulling out several documents from her portfolio, because Amara has extensively documented her interactions at Westfield, including multiple instances of harassment she's experienced from your son. She placed a neatly organized timeline on his desk. This includes dates, times, specific statements, and witness information. There are also several recordings of these incidents. More concerning is this pattern of discriminatory treatment, Diana continued. Amara is one of only 7 black students at Westfield, and we've identified at least 3 previous students of color who experienced similar treatment from both your son and this administration before leaving the school. That is a serious and unfounded accusation, Whitmore said angrily. We believe we have sufficient foundation, Diana replied calmly, including statements from a current teacher acknowledging a pattern of behavior. Whitmore leaned forward threateningly. Ms. Johnson, I don't appreciate your tone or these baseless accusations. The fact remains that Amara is on probation, and any further disruptions will result in her dismissal from Westfield. Let me be clear, Diana said, her voice still measured but now carrying unmistakable authority. There are no valid grounds for Amara's probationary status. We're requesting an immediate removal of this status and a formal investigation into the pattern of discriminatory treatment at Westfield. Whitmore laughed dismissively. Or what, Ms. Johnson? Are you threatening me? I'm not sure you understand who you're dealing with. Not the full board, came a new voice from the doorway. All heads turned to see a tall man in a well-tailored suit standing in the open doorway. Beside him was Mackenzie. Dr. Reynolds, Whitmore said, clearly surprised, this is a private meeting. When my daughter informed me of what's been happening, I felt it necessary to address it immediately, Dr. Reynolds explained. Your daughter, Whitmore repeated, looking confused. Mackenzie Reynolds, the man confirmed. I believe you know her as Mackenzie Chen, her mother's surname, which she uses at school. I'm Dr. James Reynolds, member of the Westfield Academy School Board. Whitmore's complexion paled visibly. Dr. Reynolds, this is a standard disciplinary matter that… From what I've gathered, Dr. Reynolds interrupted, there's nothing standard about it. In fact, it appears to violate several of our established policies. As the conversation continued, Whitmore became increasingly defensive. This meeting is over. I will not be ambushed in my own office. No one is ambushing you, Diana said calmly. We're simply requesting proper procedure and equal treatment for my daughter. And who exactly are you to demand anything? Whitmore snapped. Some parent who thinks she understands educational policy better than professionals. Let me be absolutely clear, your daughter remains on probation, and after this display, I'm considering immediate dismissal. The room fell silent. Diana looked at Amara, who gave her a slight nod. It was time for Plan B. Diana straightened to her full height, her demeanor shifting from concerned parent to authoritative official. Let me reintroduce myself, she said, reaching into her portfolio and withdrawing a business card which she placed on Whitmore's desk. Diana Johnson, State Education Commissioner for Ohio. In addition to being Amara's mother, I oversee education policy compliance for all public and private schools receiving state funding or accreditation, including Westfield Academy. Whitmore stared at the card, his face draining of color. I'm officially notifying you that the Department of Education will be opening a formal investigation into discriminatory practices and policy violations at Westfield Academy, effective immediately. Dr. Reynolds recovered first. Commissioner Johnson, I assure you the board takes these concerns extremely seriously. We would welcome a thorough review of our policies and their implementation. Whitmore tried to backpedal. There's been a misunderstanding, if I had known. My position shouldn't matter, Diana interrupted firmly. Every student deserves equal treatment and due process regardless of who their parents are. The fact that you're suddenly concerned now that you know my title only underscores the problem. By the next morning, Westfield Academy felt like a different place. An official notice announced that Dr. Alina Chen, the current vice principal, would be serving as acting principal effective immediately. Another notice indicated that a special board meeting would be held the following week to address community concerns regarding school climate and equity. Mackenzie showed Amara an email Dr. Chen had sent to all students and parents. She's announced a full review of all disciplinary actions from the past 3 years, the formation of a diversity and inclusion task force, and mandatory bias training for all faculty and staff. As they headed to their first class, Amara spotted Tyler in the hallway. When he saw Amara, his eyes narrowed dangerously. This isn't over, he muttered as they passed each other. You'll regret this. Throughout the day, Amara noticed other students looking at her with new interest. After chemistry class, Lin Zhang approached Amara's desk hesitantly. I wanted to apologize for not standing up for you sooner, Lin said. I was scared about my family's situation, but that's no excuse. You don't need to apologize, Amara assured her. I understand the risks you were facing. I want to help now, Lin added. For our literature project, I've already told Ms. Winters that I want to work with you, not Tyler, and if they need student statements for the investigation, I'm willing to share my experiences. By lunchtime, Amara found several students already seated at her usual table with Mackenzie, including Lin and 2 members of the debate team. We were wondering if we could join you, one of the debate team members, Sarah, said somewhat nervously. As they ate, the students openly discussed issues they had apparently been silently enduring for years. Whitmore's son bullied my brother so badly last year that my parents transferred him to a different school, Sarah revealed. They complained, but nothing ever happened. After school, Amara found a formal letter in her locker rescinding her probationary status, signed by Dr. Chen. That evening at home, Diana and Amara reviewed documents for the state investigation. The board is taking this very seriously, Diana explained. Once they realized the extent of the documentation we have, they became extremely cooperative. What's going to happen to Principal Whitmore? Amara asked. That depends on the full investigation, but based on what we've uncovered so far, it's unlikely he'll return to Westfield. The evidence of discriminatory practices is substantial. And Tyler, that's more complicated, Diana admitted. He's still a student, and while his behavior has been problematic, the blame lies primarily with the adults who enabled and protected him. The next day at school, Amara noticed several new posters announcing a community forum on school climate scheduled for the following week. During lunch, Mackenzie arrived with exciting news. The board has voted to create a student representative position. They want someone to attend board meetings and provide input on student concerns. Several people have already suggested you should run. Me, but I've only been here for a month. Exactly, said Sarah. You haven't been here long enough to accept all the problems as normal. You saw things clearly and had the courage to speak up. After school, Ms. Winters asked Amara to join the new Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. Because you've demonstrated exactly the qualities we need: courage, clarity, and compassion. You stood up against unfair treatment without becoming bitter or vindictive. The week following Principal Whitmore's suspension buzzed with discussions of policy changes and preparations for the community forum. Amara found herself fielding questions from students who suddenly viewed her as an authority on educational rights. Tyler, meanwhile, moved through the school with hunched shoulders and a guarded expression, transformed from untouchable prince to isolated pariah in the span of days. After school, Dr. Chen informed Amara the board has scheduled a formal hearing regarding Gerald Whitmore's employment status for next week. As the initial complainant, you may be asked to provide testimony. Amara felt anxious but determined. If it helps them understand what happened, I'm willing to do it. That evening, Diana shared more findings from the investigation. Gerald Whitmore's pattern of discriminatory behavior extends well beyond what happened to you. We've identified at least 11 former students who experienced similar treatment over the past decade, all students of color, all eventually pushed out through questionable disciplinary actions. The next day, Tyler had a public altercation with another student in the cafeteria. As he was escorted out by security, his gaze locked onto Amara with naked hatred. After school, as Amara walked to her locker in an empty hallway, she found Tyler waiting for her. Are you happy now? He demanded. You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, Amara replied carefully. I just refused to let you and your father bully me. You don't know what bullying is, Tyler scoffed. Try having everyone in school suddenly treat you like you're toxic. Try having your father suspended and humiliated. Despite her wariness, Amara felt a flicker of compassion. I'm sorry you're going through that, but your father's actions and yours had consequences. It is your fault, Tyler insisted, taking a step closer. Everything was fine until you showed up with your self-righteous attitude and your connections. That's the problem, Tyler, Amara replied steadily. Everyone kept their head down because they were afraid. That doesn't make what was happening right. Tyler's hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, you have no idea what it's like to have everything fall apart. Actually, I do, Amara said quietly. When my father died 5 years ago, it felt like my entire world collapsed. But that experience taught me something. When things fall apart, you have an opportunity to rebuild them better. Tyler seemed momentarily thrown by this personal revelation but quickly recovered his anger. Save your inspirational speech. The hearing is next week and you think you're going to tell everyone what a monster my father is. You think you're so smart but you have no idea what you've started, Tyler continued, his face contorted with rage. By the time I'm finished, no one will believe you anyway. What does that mean? Amara asked directly. It means you should think very carefully about what you say at that hearing. Actions have consequences, right? That works both ways. Before Amara could respond, Dr. Reynolds approached from down the hallway, asking if everything was all right. Tyler immediately transformed his demeanor, but the teacher insisted on walking Amara out of the building. Did he threaten you? Dr. Reynolds asked once they were outside. Not directly, Amara replied, but he suggested I should be careful about what I say at the hearing. That evening, Amara recounted the encounter to her mother, who immediately called Dr. Chen. The next morning, Amara was informed that Tyler had been suspended pending a disciplinary review. After school, Mackenzie showed Amara a series of anonymous social media posts about her, claiming she had fabricated allegations against Principal Whitmore to avoid legitimate disciplinary action for cheating. Another suggested she was using her mother's position to bully the school administration. This is what he meant, Amara realized. Tyler must have created this account. This is blatant retaliation, Mackenzie exclaimed. We need to report it immediately. But Amara had a different perspective. Tyler wants me to be defensive to get caught up in denying these ridiculous claims. He wants to distract from the real issue, his father's pattern of discrimination. So what are you going to do? Mackenzie asked. I'm going to focus on preparing my testimony with even more documentation. The truth doesn't need defenders, it just needs to be spoken clearly. The day of the hearing arrived with a weight of anticipation. Amara dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy blue dress and the pearl earrings that had been a gift from her father. The hearing was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. in the school's main conference room. The anonymous social media posts had continued throughout the week, growing increasingly desperate in their attempts to discredit her. Rather than engaging with these accusations, Amara had focused on strengthening her testimony. Inside the conference room, 7 board members were already seated at the front. Dr. Reynolds gave Amara a subtle nod of encouragement. On the left side sat Gerald Whitmore, almost unrecognizable from the imposing figure who had once intimidated her in his office. He looked smaller somehow, his face drawn and pale. The board chairperson, Dr. Patricia Hammond, called the hearing to order and invited the district's attorney to present the case regarding Whitmore's conduct. Ms. Lawson methodically outlined the evidence: the documented pattern of targeting minority students for disproportionate discipline, the failure to follow established procedures, and the attempts to intimidate students who raised concerns. We have statements from 11 former students who experienced similar discriminatory treatment, Ms. Lawson continued, and written documentation contradicting Mr. Whitmore's claims regarding disciplinary procedures. Whitmore's attorney argued that he had dedicated 12 years to making Westfield one of the top-performing schools in the state, dismissing the discrimination allegations as misunderstandings. After both attorneys had presented their cases, Dr. Hammond called Amara to the podium to share her experiences directly. Amara approached with measured steps, her voice clear and steady as she detailed the incidents chronologically. She described Tyler's initial hostility, the escalating pattern of harassment, and finally Principal Whitmore's intervention, not to address the harassment but to punish her for reporting it. What became clear to me, and has since been confirmed by many others' experiences, is that this was not an isolated incident but part of a pattern, Amara explained. Students of color at Westfield who stand up for themselves are systematically targeted, while others who engage in similar or worse behavior receive no consequences. She concluded by addressing the broader implications. This isn't just about me or even about Principal Whitmore. It's about whether Westfield Academy truly lives up to its stated values of excellence, integrity, and equal opportunity for all students. When she finished, the board asked several questions, which Amara answered clearly and directly. When asked about the anonymous social media posts claiming she fabricated allegations, Amara responded, "Those posts began appearing only after Tyler Whitmore was suspended for making threatening comments to me. They contain easily disproven falsehoods." Gerald Whitmore's testimony contrasted sharply with Amara's measured approach. He appeared defensive and increasingly agitated as he attempted to justify his actions. "As principal, I have discretionary authority in disciplinary matters," he insisted repeatedly. When asked about the lack of documentation for Amara's alleged infractions, he became evasive. When confronted with the statistical evidence showing disproportionate discipline of minority students, he first denied its accuracy, then claimed it was coincidental, and finally suggested it reflected cultural differences in behavior. The final moment came when Dr. Hammond asked about his son's behavior. "Multiple witnesses have described a pattern of harassment by your son directed at Ms. Johnson and other minority students. Were you aware of this behavior?" After a tense pause, Whitmore admitted reluctantly, "I received some complaints, yes." "And how did you address those complaints?" "I spoke with Tyler about appropriate behavior." "Did you document these incidents as required by school policy?" "I handled them informally. As his father, I felt." "As principal," Dr. Hammond corrected, "what action did you take to protect the students being harassed by your son?" Whitmore had no answer. The silence spoke volumes. After all testimonies concluded, the board deliberated in closed session. When they returned, Dr. Hammond announced their unanimous decision. "We find compelling evidence of repeated policy violations, discriminatory practices, and abuse of authority. Therefore, effective immediately, Gerald Whitmore's employment as principal of Westfield Academy is terminated. Further, the board has voted to implement a comprehensive review of all disciplinary actions taken during his tenure." Dr. Hammond outlined additional measures: mandatory anti-bias training for all faculty and staff, the establishment of a permanent diversity and equity committee with student representation, and a formalized anonymous reporting system for concerns about discrimination. Finally, she concluded, the board wishes to express its gratitude to those who had the courage to come forward with their experiences, particularly Amara Johnson, whose meticulous documentation and articulate testimony were instrumental in bringing these issues to light. Outside the conference room, Diana embraced her daughter tightly. I am so proud of you. We did it together, Amara replied. No, Diana said firmly, you did this. You stood your ground, gathered the evidence, and spoke your truth. I just provided a little backup. As they walked through the main hallway toward the exit, they passed the large bronze plaque displaying Westfield Academy's mission statement, Excellence, Integrity, Opportunity. The words seemed to hold new meaning now, a promise the school might finally begin to fulfill for all its students. In the following weeks, Westfield Academy underwent a profound transformation. Amara was elected as the first student representative to the board and became a key member of the Diversity and Equity Committee. Dr. Chen was confirmed as the permanent principal, bringing her compassionate but rigorous leadership to the ongoing reforms. On the last day of classes, Dr. Chen shared news with Amara. The State Education Department has selected Westfield as a pilot site for their new educational equity initiative. Apparently, Commissioner Johnson was impressed by the changes we've implemented. As Amara left the building that day, she reflected on how her initial goal of simply receiving a quality education had evolved into something far more significant. She had not only secured her own right to fair treatment, but had helped create systemic changes that would benefit countless students in the years to come. She had discovered something powerful about herself, that one person with courage, determination, and a commitment to truth could indeed change an entrenched system. It wasn't easy and it wasn't accomplished alone, but it was possible. And that knowledge, more than any academic achievement, was the most valuable education Westfield Academy had given her.